The notification came through at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon, right as the photographer was positioning everyone for the family portraits. My phone buzzed against the silk of my wedding dress pocket, and something told me to check it. The message read, "Congratulations on your special day. By the way, my father just finalized the acquisition of TechVance Solutions. Consider this your termination notice, effective immediately. Enjoy your honeymoon while you can still afford one. Cassandra." My hands went cold despite the June heat. Cassandra Whitmore, the same woman who tried to undermine every presentation I'd given at industry conferences. The same woman who'd stolen my product pitch 2 years ago and presented it as her own at a board meeting I wasn't invited to. And now, apparently, her father's conglomerate had just purchased the company I'd built from the ground up. Welcome to Payback Office Channel, where karma doesn't just knock, it breaks down the door and rewrites the ending. If you're someone who believes that integrity still matters in the business world, you might want to stick around. We're building a community here, working our way to 8,000 subscribers who know that the best revenge is the success they said you couldn't have. That little button below, it's your ticket to these stories. My name is Alara Nakamura, and until that text message, I was the Chief Innovation Officer of TechVance Solutions. My parents taught me that success isn't about stepping on others to climb higher, it's about extending your hand to pull people up with you. That upbringing shaped every decision I made in my career, every team I built, every principle I refused to compromise. I showed the message to James, my brand new husband, who was adjusting his tie and laughing with his college roommate. He read it, and then he actually laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an uncomfortable one. A genuine, deep, rumbling laugh that made several guests turn their heads. "What's so funny?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Did you read what she just sent me?" "I did," James said, his eyes crinkling at the corners in that way that usually made me melt. Today it made me want to throw my bouquet at him. "Alara, sweetheart, you really need to stop letting Cassandra get under your skin. So what if her daddy bought TechVance? You have your severance package, your stock options, and honestly, maybe this is good timing. We can travel now, start that family we talked about." I stared at the man I just vowed to spend my life with, and something inside me shifted. In 6 years together, James had always been supportive of my career. Or at least, I'd thought he was. Now, listening to him dismiss the company I'd bled for as if it were a hobby I'd grown tired of, I realized he'd been waiting for an excuse for me to quit. "The stock options are worthless if I'm terminated for cause," I said slowly. "And something tells me Cassandra is going to make sure that's exactly how this plays out." James waved his hand dismissively. "You're paranoid. Just enjoy today, okay? We can deal with all of this next week." But I couldn't, because I knew Cassandra. I'd watched her systematically destroy the career of a colleague who dared to correct her in a meeting. I'd seen her fabricate performance issues to get a talented engineer fired because he'd rejected her advances. She didn't just win, she obliterated. The reception was held at the Grandview Estate, a sprawling property with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. I smiled for photos, cut the cake, had my first dance with James, and all the while my mind was racing. Every time I glanced at my phone, there were more messages coming through. Screenshots from colleagues at TechVance. Email chains I wasn't included on. Announcements about restructuring and new leadership direction. Then came the message from Lucas, my former assistant, and one of the few people I genuinely trusted. "Alara, they're saying you embezzled funds. They're going through your accounts right now. They have auditors in your office. I'm so sorry." I tried to stop them, but security escorted me out when I protested. My blood turned to ice. Embezzlement. That wasn't just termination, that was criminal charges. That was career destruction that would follow me forever, and it had Cassandra's fingerprints all over it. I excused myself from the head table, telling James I needed to use the restroom. Instead, I found a quiet corner in the estate's library and started making calls. First to my lawyer, who didn't answer because it was Saturday evening. Then to Rachel Morrison, the chief financial officer at TechVance, someone who'd always been straight with me. Rachel picked up on the third ring. "Alara, I can't talk to you. I've been instructed by the new ownership not to communicate with you at all." Rachel, please, they're saying I embezzled. You know that's not true. You've seen every transaction I've ever made on behalf of the company. There was a long pause. I know it's not true, but Alara, they have documentation. Invoices for services that were never rendered, payments to shell companies, all of it authorized with your digital signature. I'm looking at it right now, and if I didn't know you, I'd believe it. That's impossible. I never authorized any, I stopped. Digital signature. 6 months ago, there'd been a system upgrade. Everyone had to register their new digital signatures for approval workflows. The IT department had handled it. The IT department, that had just been outsourced to Whitmore Technologies 3 weeks before the acquisition announcement. Rachel, who handled the IT transition. Some consulting firm Whitmore brought in. They said it would streamline things before the acquisition. Why? Because they had access to create whatever digital trail they wanted. Rachel, this is a setup. Cassandra has been planning this for months. Another pause. Even if that's true, Alara, what can you do? The Whitmores own TechVance now. They own the servers, the records, everything. And they have lawyers that cost more per hour than most people make in a week. She was right. Fighting this through conventional channels would bankrupt me, and I'd still probably lose. The Whitmores didn't just have money, they had connections. Judges, politicians, media outlets. They could bury me before I even got started. Thanks for taking my call, Rachel, I said quietly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserved better than this. I hung up and sat in the leather chair, still in my wedding dress, and forced myself to think strategically. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. Cassandra wanted me destroyed, and she'd spent considerable resources setting this trap, which meant she saw me as a genuine threat. Why? The answer hit me like lightning. The Lumina project. 3 years of development, hundreds of hours of research, a revolutionary approach to sustainable data storage that would make traditional server farms obsolete. I'd been leading the team, but the project was still 18 months from completion. Or at least, that's what our official report said. We'd actually cracked it 6 months ago. The technology worked. We'd run successful tests, documented everything, and I'd quietly filed the patents under my personal name rather than the company's because something had felt off about the whole acquisition rumor mill. My lawyer at the time, Gregory Fine, had advised me that since I'd developed the core concepts on my own time, before TechVance even existed, I had legal standing to maintain personal ownership and license it to the company. Cassandra didn't just want me gone, she wanted the Lumina project, and she thought buying TechVance would give it to her. A smile slowly spread across my face, the first genuine one since that text message arrived. I rejoined the reception, where James was doing shots with his groomsmen and barely noticed my absence. My maid of honor, Keisha, pulled me aside immediately. Okay, what's going on? You've had that look since the photos. Keisha and I had been roommates in graduate school. She was now a professor of business ethics at Columbia and had zero tolerance for corporate nonsense. I showed her my phone, the entire message chain, watching her expressions shift from confusion to anger to something that looked almost like anticipation. They forged documents to frame you for embezzlement. Looks like it. And your new husband's response was to tell you to calm down and enjoy your wedding. I glanced over at James, who was laughing too loudly at someone's joke. Apparently. Keisha was quiet for a moment. What do you need? Access to a secure computer, someone I can trust at the patent office, and a really good entertainment lawyer. Entertainment lawyer. Trust me. Keisha made 3 phone calls, and within an hour, we were in her hotel suite with her laptop, a patent attorney named Douglas Reeves on video call, and a contract lawyer named Simone Patterson who specialized in intellectual property for the film industry, which was closer to what I needed than anyone might think. Walk me through this, Douglas said, pulling up the patent filing I'd submitted 8 months ago. You're the sole inventor on these patents, filed before any acquisition talks began, and TechVance has been operating under a licensing agreement with you. A very quietly structured licensing agreement, yes. The company had exclusive rights to develop and commercialize the technology with standard royalty arrangements. And now TechVance has been acquired by Whitmore Industries. As of this morning, apparently. Douglas leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. Do you know what happens to licensing agreements when a company is acquired? They transfer to the new owner, unless there's a change of control clause. And did you include a change of control clause? I had. Gregory had insisted on it, actually. At the time, I'd thought he was being overly cautious. Now I wanted to send him a fruit basket. Any change in majority ownership of TechVance Solutions automatically terminates the licensing agreement and reverts all rights to me with a 30-day negotiation window. Which means, Simone jumped in, clearly getting excited, that as of this morning, Whitmore Industries owns a company that just lost the rights to its most valuable asset. And if they terminated you, which their own messages confirm they did, they also violated the good faith clause of the licensing agreement, which would void the negotiation window entirely. Meaning you can license it to anyone you want, or no one. You could shut down their entire operation. But I wasn't thinking about shutting anything down. I was thinking bigger. What if I don't want to license it at all? What if I want to manufacture and distribute it myself? Douglas whistled low. That would require significant capital. Manufacturing facilities, distribution networks, marketing. You're talking hundreds of millions in startup costs. What if I had investors ready to go? Because I did. 6 months ago, I'd been approached by Velocity Ventures, one of the most aggressive tech investment firms in Silicon Valley. They'd wanted to fund a spin-off of the Lumina project, offered me a blank check basically, but I turned them down out of loyalty to TechVance. Their managing partner, Andrea Wolf, had told me the offer stood if I ever changed my mind. I was definitely changing my mind. Keisha was already dialing. Andrea Wolf's assistant is a former student of mine. I can get you a meeting. It's 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Andrea doesn't sleep. She'll take the meeting. Keisha was right. 20 minutes later, I was on a video call with Andrea Wolf, still in my wedding dress, explaining the situation. Andrea listened without interrupting, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. So let me make sure I understand, Andrea said when I finished. You hold the patents. They just terminated you, which voided their license. They think they own the technology, but they actually own nothing. And you want to build a competing company from scratch. Not from scratch. I have the technology, I have the research, I have the test results. What I need is capital and infrastructure. And revenge. I paused. I prefer to think of it as market correction. Andrea laughed, a sharp bark of sound. I like you, Alara. I liked you 6 months ago, and I like you even more now. Here's what I'm prepared to do. Velocity Ventures will provide $500 million in initial funding. We'll take a 30% equity stake. You maintain controlling interest. We'll have manufacturing contracts signed within a week, distribution partnerships within 2, and we'll undercut Whitmore's projected pricing by 40% while still maintaining better margins because your technology is that much more efficient. My heart was pounding. That's incredibly generous. That's business. The Whitmores have been overcharging for inferior technology for years because they've maintained a monopoly through aggressive acquisition tactics and anti-competitive practices. You're offering me a chance to break that monopoly and make a fortune doing it. When can you start? I glanced down at my wedding dress, at the reception still happening 1 floor below, at my new husband who dismissed my life's work as something I could just walk away from. Tomorrow morning too soon. Tomorrow morning is perfect. I'll have the contracts ready for review by 6 a.m. Plan to spend the day in our offices. Bring anyone you trust to look over the agreements. After the call ended, I sat in silence for a moment. Keisha handed me a glass of champagne. You know this is going to get ugly, she said. It's already ugly. I'm just changing who wins. What about James? That was the question, wasn't it? I just married a man who'd laughed off what might be the biggest betrayal of my professional life. Who'd suggested I use this as an excuse to step back from my career, to start a family. As if my ambitions were something to be set aside when they became inconvenient. I went back downstairs. The reception was winding down, guests beginning to filter out. James found me immediately, wrapping his arm around my waist. There you are, I was starting to think you'd run off. You okay? You seem distracted. We need to talk. His smile faltered slightly. Now, can it wait until tomorrow? No, it really can't. We found another quiet corner, away from the remaining guests. I showed him everything. The messages from Cassandra, the embezzlement accusations, the patent ownership, the investor call I'd just finished. James's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, to something that looked almost like anger. Wait, you took a meeting with investors. Tonight, on our wedding night. They're framing me for embezzlement, James. I had to act fast. But $500 million. Alara, that's insane. You can't actually be considering starting a whole new company. We just got married, we have plans. Plans that apparently involved me giving up my career. That's not fair. I just thought, with the severance package, we could take some time, figure things out together. There is no severance package. They terminated me for cause, which means I get nothing from TechVance. But I own the patents to the Lumina project, which means they get nothing either. James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as frustration. Okay, so you own some patents. That doesn't mean you have to start a company. You could sell them, license them to someone else, and still walk away with millions. Why do you have to make this into a war? Because Cassandra tried to destroy me. She fabricated evidence to make me look like a criminal. She wanted to take everything I'd built and claim it as hers. You think I should just let that go? I think you should be smart about this. The Whitmores are incredibly powerful. They have resources you can't imagine. Going up against them is professional suicide. Or it's exactly what needs to happen. James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. If you do this, it's going to consume your life. Every waking moment will be about building this company, fighting the Whitmores, proving yourself. Is that really what you want? Right now, yes, that's exactly what I want. What about us? What about our marriage? And there it was, the question I'd been avoiding. I looked at James, really looked at him. He was handsome, charming, successful in his own right as a financial consultant. We'd had 6 good years together. But standing here, watching him ask me to choose between my marriage and my self-respect, I realized something crucial. He'd never actually believed I'd choose myself. I think, I said slowly, that we might have made a mistake today. His face went pale. You're not serious. You laughed, James. When I showed you that text from Cassandra, your first instinct was to laugh and tell me to get over it. You didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't offer to help. You just dismissed it. Because I didn't want you to let her ruin our wedding day. She was accusing me of embezzlement. She was destroying my career. And you thought the appropriate response was to ignore it and have another drink. That's not fair, Lara. Maybe not, but it's true. We stood there in silence, the weight of the moment settling over both of us. Finally, James shook his head. So what, you want a divorce, on our wedding night? I want a husband who sees me as an equal partner, who respects my work as much as I respect his, who doesn't assume that when things get difficult, I'll be the one to step back. I have always respected your work. Have you? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you respected it, as long as it didn't interfere with your vision of what our life should look like. James's jaw tightened. Fine, do what you need to do. Build your company, fight your war with the Whitmores, but don't expect me to put my life on hold while you do it. I wouldn't dream of it. He walked away, back toward his groomsmen, and I stood there in my wedding dress, watching my marriage end before it had really begun. Keisha appeared at my elbow. You okay? Honestly, I have no idea. Ask me in 6 months. You have a place to stay tonight. I hadn't even thought about that. James and I were supposed to leave for our honeymoon in the Maldives tomorrow morning. That clearly wasn't happening now. I'll get a hotel room. Stay with me. We'll order room service, go over the contracts when they come through, and plan your next move. Keisha, you don't have to. You just blew up your marriage and declared war on one of the most powerful families in tech, all in the same evening. You're not staying alone tonight. Come on. We gathered my things, and I changed out of my wedding dress for the last time. The Grandview estate staff helped me pack it away, their expressions carefully neutral, even though they definitely noticed the tension between James and me. By midnight, Keisha and I were in her suite, Chinese takeout spread across the desk, reviewing the preliminary contracts Andrea's team had sent over. They were aggressive but fair. Velocity Ventures would provide the capital, but I'd maintain creative and strategic control. They wanted speed to market, which aligned perfectly with my goals. "You know what you're doing is going to make major waves," Keisha said, highlighting a clause about intellectual property protection. "The Whitmores don't lose gracefully." "I'm counting on it. The messier they make this, the more attention it draws to their business practices. And the more their other acquisitions start questioning what they actually own versus what they think they own. You're not just building a company, you're dismantling theirs. I'm providing market alternatives. If their business model can't survive competition, that's not my problem." Keisha grinned. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." The contracts were solid. By 2 a.m, I'd signed them digitally, and Velocity Ventures had wired the first $100 million into the newly established corporate account for Lumina Technologies. The name felt right. Simple, direct, and a clear signal about what we were bringing to market. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made lists. Engineers I wanted to recruit, manufacturing partners to approach, marketing strategies, distribution channels, every detail that would need to be addressed in the coming weeks. At 5:30 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. "Miss Nakamura, this is Margaret Bristol from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm calling about some irregularities that have been reported regarding your financial activities at TechVance Solutions." My stomach dropped. The Whitmores were already moving. What kind of irregularities? "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone, but we'll need you to come in for an interview. Given the seriousness of the allegations, I'd recommend bringing legal counsel." "What allegations specifically?" "Embezzlement, fraud, and misappropriation of corporate assets. Can you make yourself available tomorrow afternoon?" "I can make myself available today if needed. I have nothing to hide." There was a pause. Clearly, she'd expected resistance or panic. "Today works, 2 p.m. at our downtown office." "I'll be there." I hung up and immediately called Douglas Reeves. He answered on the second ring, sounding wide awake despite the early hour. "SEC interview at 2 p.m. They're moving fast on the embezzlement angle." "Expected. Here's what's going to happen. You'll go in, answer their questions completely honestly, and provide documentation that you had zero access to the accounts in question. Meanwhile, I'm going to file a formal complaint about the fraudulent use of your digital signature. We go on offense, not defense." The SEC interview was exactly as uncomfortable as expected. Margaret Bristol was professional but skeptical, walking me through a series of transactions that had allegedly occurred over the past 6 months. Payments to vendors that didn't exist, services that were never rendered, all of it supposedly authorized by me. Douglas had prepared me well. For each transaction, I provided my actual whereabouts and activities during the time the authorization supposedly occurred. For most of them, I'd been in public settings, conferences, presentations, with dozens of witnesses. For the others, I had email chains and calendar invites that proved I was engaged in completely different work. "And you're saying someone forged your digital signature?" Margaret asked. "I'm saying that Whitmore Technologies managed the IT transition at TechVance Solutions 6 weeks before the acquisition was finalized. They had complete access to our systems, including the protocols for digital signatures. The timing isn't coincidental." "That's a serious accusation." "It's a serious crime they're accusing me of. I'm simply pointing out that the party with the means, motive, and opportunity isn't me." Margaret made notes, her expression unreadable. "We'll need to examine the IT records from that transition period." "I've already requested them through my attorney. TechVance has been reluctant to provide them." "I'm sure they have. We'll issue a subpoena." The interview lasted 3 hours. By the time I left, I was exhausted but cautiously optimistic. Margaret Bristol was thorough, but she wasn't stupid. She could see the inconsistencies in the timeline, the suspicious convenience of the evidence against me. I went straight to the Velocity Ventures offices, where Andrea had assembled a team of about 15 people, all waiting in the main conference room. Engineers, designers, manufacturing specialists, legal experts. She'd moved fast. Everyone, this is Alara Nakamura, founder and CEO of Lumina Technologies. Alara, this is your new team. We have 4 weeks to go from patents to prototype production. Let's get to work. The next month was a blur. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. We secured manufacturing partnerships with facilities in 3 states. We streamlined the Lumina design for mass production. We developed marketing materials that highlighted the environmental and cost benefits of our technology. And we kept everything absolutely quiet. James had moved out of our apartment, staying with his brother while we figured out the divorce logistics. He'd sent a few texts, mostly about dividing property, all of them coldly formal. Part of me ached at how quickly we'd gone from married to strangers, but a larger part was relieved that I didn't have to defend my choices anymore. Cassandra, meanwhile, had gone silent. No gloating messages, no public announcements about the TechVance acquisition. That worried me more than her previous aggression. Quiet meant she was planning something. The answer came on day 28 of our 4-week sprint. Lucas, my former assistant who'd been escorted out of TechVance, called me at 11 p.m. Alara, you need to know what's happening. Cassandra's been showing the Lumina project to potential clients, taking pre-orders, promising delivery in 6 months. She can't deliver on those promises. She doesn't have the technology. She thinks she does. The entire engineering team has been working on it nonstop. But they keep hitting the same walls you guys hit 2 years ago. The sustainable aspect doesn't scale, and the costs are prohibitive. She's furious. How do you know all this? Because they hired me back. Offered me double my previous salary to provide institutional knowledge about the Lumina project. They have no idea I'm still loyal to you. I smiled. Lucas, you're taking a huge risk. You gave me my first real job out of college. You mentored me, promoted me, treated me like I mattered. Cassandra treats everyone like they're disposable. It's not even a question of loyalty, it's just basic decency. What else are they planning? There's a big product announcement scheduled for next week. Cassandra's going to unveil what she's calling the Whitmore Lumina system at the Tech Forward conference. She spent millions on marketing, pre-sold units to major clients. The only problem is the technology doesn't actually work yet. And when it fails, she's planning to blame it on your alleged sabotage. Claim you corrupted the research data before you left. Frame it as corporate espionage. Of course she was. Cassandra didn't just want to win, she wanted to destroy me so thoroughly that I could never recover. Lucas, how would you feel about being the director of operations for a new company? There was a pause. Are you serious? Completely. Lumina Technologies is going to market in 2 weeks. I could use someone I trust running day-to-day operations. I'm in, whatever you need. First thing I need is for you to stay at TechVance until after their announcement. Document everything. If Cassandra's going to accuse me of sabotage, I want proof that she knew the technology didn't work and chose to defraud her clients anyway. Consider it done. We had 2 weeks before Cassandra's announcement, which meant we had 2 weeks to be ready for the fallout. Andrea accelerated our timeline. We started reaching out to the same clients Cassandra had pre-sold to, offering them private demonstrations of the actual working technology. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Turns out, when you can prove your product actually does what you claim, people get very interested. Within a week, we had commitments for $300 million in first-year sales. But I wanted more than sales. I wanted vindication. The Tech Forward conference was the biggest industry event of the year. 10,000 attendees, major media coverage, live-streamed to millions. Cassandra had booked the main stage for her announcement, prime-time slot, everything coordinated for maximum impact. We booked a booth in the exhibition hall. Small, unassuming, no advance publicity. Just a sign that read Lumina Technologies and a working prototype of our system. The conference opened on a Tuesday morning. Cassandra's announcement was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. We had 24 hours to build buzz. The tech community is small and incredibly interconnected. By Tuesday evening, word had spread that there was a mystery company in the exhibition hall demonstrating technology that looked suspiciously like the Whitmore Lumina system, except it actually worked. By Wednesday morning, there was a line of people waiting to see our booth. Engineers from competing firms, journalists from major tech publications, and, most satisfyingly, several of the clients who'd pre-ordered from Cassandra. I watched from a distance as our team demonstrated the technology, answering technical questions and handing out information packets. Andrea stood next to me, grinning like a predator who just spotted prey. You know she's going to lose her mind when she finds out you're here. I'm counting on it. At 1:30 p.m., an hour before Cassandra's scheduled announcement, I got a text from an unknown number. You need to withdraw from this conference immediately. Your presence constitutes industrial espionage, and we will pursue legal action. I showed it to Andrea. Industrial espionage. That's rich coming from someone who forged documents to frame me for embezzlement. Want me to have our lawyers respond? No, I want to do something better. Can you get me a camera crew? By 2:15 p.m., I was standing in the exhibition hall, surrounded by journalists, with a camera crew filming as I gave an impromptu press conference. I kept it factual, professional, and devastating. My name is Alara Nakamura, and I'm the founder of Lumina Technologies. I'm also the former Chief Innovation Officer of TechVance Solutions, which was recently acquired by Whitmore Industries. I hold the patents for the sustainable data storage technology that Whitmore Industries plans to announce this afternoon. I developed this technology over 3 years, filed the patents under my personal name, and licensed it to TechVance under an agreement that terminated when the company changed ownership. Whitmore Industries is attempting to market technology they do not own, cannot replicate, and have no legal right to sell. The questions came rapid fire. How could I prove I own the patents? Why would Whitmore announce a product they couldn't deliver? What was my relationship with Cassandra Whitmore? I answered each one calmly, providing documentation, explaining the timeline, and carefully avoiding anything that could be construed as a personal attack. I didn't need to attack. The facts were damning enough. At 2:45, 15 minutes before her scheduled announcement, Cassandra appeared in the exhibition hall. She was dressed in an immaculate white suit, her expression absolutely murderous. Our eyes met across the crowd, and I saw the moment she realized exactly how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered her. She strode over, her publicity team scrambling to keep up. Security personnel flanked her on both sides, their presence clearly meant to intimidate. The crowd around my booth parted, creating a clear path between us. Cameras immediately swiveled in her direction. You have a lot of nerve showing up here, Cassandra said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent exhibition hall. It's a public conference. I paid for my booth just like everyone else. You're violating about 6 different non-compete clauses. I never signed a non-compete. TechVance never required one because I was part of the original founding team. You might want to check your acquisition documents more carefully. Cassandra's jaw tightened. One of her assistants stepped forward, tablet in hand, presumably to show her the verification of what I'd just said. She waved him away without looking. You can't prove you own those patents. I pulled out my phone and showed her the patent office documentation, complete with filing dates and inventor attribution. Actually, I can. Would you like to see the licensing agreement that terminated when you acquired TechVance? I have that too. A journalist pushed forward, camera rolling. Miss Whitmore, can you comment on the allegations that Whitmore Industries is attempting to market technology it doesn't own? Cassandra's media training kicked in. She smiled, cold and professional. Whitmore Industries conducts thorough due diligence on all acquisitions. We're confident in our legal position, and we look forward to bringing the Whitmore Lumina system to market as scheduled. Even though Miss Nakamura holds the patents. Patents can be challenged. Technology can be developed through multiple paths. We have a strong engineering team working on our own implementation. But can you deliver on the promises you've made to clients? I asked quietly. Because based on the technical specifications you've published, your system doesn't actually solve the scalability issues. It's essentially the same technology that's been available for 5 years, just repackaged with better marketing. Cassandra's smile never wavered, but her eyes promised violence. Behind her, I could see one of her engineers, a man named Timothy Frost who'd been on my original team, and his face had gone pale. He knew I was right. They all knew. "We'll see who's still standing in 6 months," Cassandra said. "Looking forward to it," I replied. She left, her entourage trailing behind her like the train of a wedding dress. The tension in the exhibition hall broke, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. Journalists rushed to file their stories. Engineers crowded around our booth with renewed interest. Several of Cassandra's pre-order clients approached me directly, asking about switching their contracts to Lumina Technologies. Andrea materialized at my side, her phone already pressed to her ear. "Legal is drawing up transfer agreements. We can have them ready in an hour." I headed to the main conference hall to watch Cassandra's presentation. The room was packed, standing room only. The lights dimmed, and Cassandra took the stage to polite applause. She was a good speaker, confident and polished. Her presentation was slick, full of impressive graphics and bold claims. But everything was theoretical. Computer simulations showed how the Whitmore Lumina system would work. Animated diagrams explained the technology. Financial projections demonstrated the cost savings clients could expect. What she didn't show was a working prototype. No live demonstration, no real-world test results, just promises. When she opened the floor for questions, the atmosphere shifted. An engineer from Datacore Systems stood up. "Miss Whitmore, we saw a working demonstration of similar technology in the exhibition hall this morning. Can you explain why you're showing us simulations instead of an actual working system?" Cassandra's smile tightened fractionally. The exhibition hall demonstration was unauthorized use of proprietary Whitmore technology. We're pursuing legal action. Another hand went up, a woman from Pacific Networks. But Miss Nakamura demonstrated patent documentation showing she developed and owns the core technology. How do you respond to that? Patent disputes are common in the tech industry. We're confident our legal team will resolve any issues. What I can tell you is that Whitmore Industries has the resources, the manufacturing capability, and the distribution network to deliver on our commitments. A journalist from Tech Review stood. "Can you provide a timeline for when clients will actually receive working units?" "We're targeting a 6-month delivery window for our first clients." 6 months, Miss Nakamura's company is promising delivery in 8 weeks. Cassandra's composure cracked slightly. "That's impossible. The manufacturing requirements alone would take months to establish." "She already has manufacturing partnerships in place," the journalist said. "We verified it." I watched Cassandra's presentation unravel in real time, each question more pointed than the last, each answer less convincing. By the time she left the stage, the damage was done. Her company's credibility was in tatters. My phone started buzzing before she'd even cleared the stage. Messages from former TechVance employees offering to jump ship. Inquiries from potential investors wanting to get in on Lumina Technologies. Interview requests from every major tech publication. And one message from Lucas: she just fired 3 senior engineers for failing to deliver on project milestones. The entire team is terrified. Half of them are updating their resumes right now. I forwarded the message to our head of HR. "Start making calls. I want to offer positions to anyone from TechVance who wants to jump. Full relocation assistance, signing bonuses, the works." Within 48 hours of the Tech Forward conference, we'd hired 12 engineers from TechVance. Within a week, it was 23. Cassandra was hemorrhaging talent, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Her lawyers sent cease and desist letters. They filed complaints with the patent office claiming I'd stolen company research. They leaked stories to friendly journalists suggesting I'd sabotaged TechVance's systems before leaving. But every move they made just drew more attention to their fundamental problem. They'd spent a fortune acquiring a company for technology they didn't actually own. And every attempt to discredit me just gave me another opportunity to demonstrate that Lumina Technologies had what they didn't: a product that actually worked. The SEC investigation into the embezzlement accusations concluded after 6 weeks. Margaret Bristol called me personally to deliver the news. We found extensive evidence of digital signature forgery coordinated through the IT transition managed by Whitmore Technologies. We're pursuing charges against several individuals involved in the scheme. You're completely cleared, and will be issuing a public statement to that effect. Thank you. For what it's worth, Miss Nakamura, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of corporate fraud, but I've never seen someone set up quite this elaborately. The fact that you managed to turn it around the way you did is impressive. I had good help and motivation. The SEC's public statement hit the news cycle the same day that 3 of Whitmore's major pre-order clients officially canceled their contracts. The stock market responded immediately. Whitmore Industries' share price dropped 8% in a single day. By the end of the week, it was down 18%. Financial analysts started digging into Whitmore's other recent acquisitions, questioning whether the company had properly secured the intellectual property it claimed to own. 2 separate shareholder lawsuits were filed, alleging mismanagement and fraud. Cassandra's father, William Whitmore, finally stepped in. The company issued a statement announcing a strategic restructuring of their technology division. Cassandra was reassigned to their European operations, effectively exiled from the company's headquarters. I received a formal letter from Whitmore Industries' legal department. They were willing to negotiate a licensing agreement for the Lumina technology. The offer was generous, surprisingly so, $80 million per year for a 10-year exclusive license. I had Douglas review it. He looked up from the contract with raised eyebrows. This is actually a fair offer, more than fair, honestly. Send them our counteroffer. Non-exclusive license, 5-year term, $120 million per year. And they have to publicly acknowledge that the technology was developed by me and licensed to them by Lumina Technologies. They'll never agree to the public acknowledgement. Then I guess we don't have a deal. They agreed within 24 hours. The public acknowledgement was probably what hurt most. William Whitmore had to stand in front of cameras and admit that his company had mishandled the TechVance acquisition, that they'd failed to secure the rights to the Lumina technology, and that they were now licensing it from a competitor. The business media coverage was brutal. Articles analyzing how one of the most powerful tech conglomerates had been outmaneuvered by a startup founded by a woman they'd tried to destroy. Think pieces about the importance of proper due diligence. Profiles of me and Lumina Technologies. Lumina Technologies officially launched 3 months after my wedding day. We had manufacturing facilities running at full capacity, orders backlogged for 8 months, and partnerships with companies that had previously been exclusive Whitmore clients. Revenue projections exceeded Andrea's most optimistic estimates. James's divorce attorney reached out to negotiate the settlement. It was surprisingly amicable. We'd only been married for 1 day, there were no kids, no shared property beyond what we could easily divide. He wanted it done quickly and quietly, and so did I. I saw him one last time, at a coffee shop halfway between our old apartment and his new place. He looked tired, older somehow. I saw the article about you in Forbes, he said. Congratulations, really. Thank you. I'm sorry for not understanding what this meant to you, for thinking you should just walk away. I stirred my coffee, considering my words carefully. I think we both made assumptions about what our marriage would look like. Neither of us was entirely wrong, but we weren't compatible. If I'd supported you from the beginning, would it have made a difference? Honestly, I didn't know. Maybe if James had stood beside me that day, if he'd been outraged on my behalf instead of dismissive, things would have played out differently. But I also knew that building Lumina Technologies had required a single-minded focus that wouldn't have left much room for a relationship. I don't think either of us would have been happy with the compromises we'd have had to make, I said finally. This way, we both get to build the lives we actually want. He nodded, accepting that. For what it's worth, I always knew you were brilliant. I just didn't realize quite how formidable you were." Neither did Cassandra Whitmore. That was her mistake. We finalized the divorce papers that afternoon. No drama, no bitterness, just two people acknowledging that sometimes timing matters as much as love. Keisha threw me a divorce party that weekend, though she insisted on calling it a liberation celebration. We invited my core team from Lumina Technologies, a few close friends, and spent the evening toasting to new beginnings. "Speech," someone called out, and suddenly everyone was looking at me expectantly. I stood, raising my glass. A year ago, if someone had told me that my wedding day would end with my marriage imploding and my career in ruins, I would have been devastated. If they'd told me that 6 months later I'd be running my own company, competing directly with one of the most powerful conglomerates in tech, and actually winning, I wouldn't have believed them. But here we are. And I've learned something important. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the universe clearing space for something better. So here's to cleared space, to second chances, and to making sure that the people who try to destroy you regret it for the rest of their lives. Everyone laughed and drank, and something settled inside me that felt like peace. 3 weeks later, Lucas burst into my office, waving his tablet. "You need to see this." He pulled up a news article. Whitmore Industries was launching a competing product, calling it the Whitmore Next Gen system. The announcement was scheduled for the following week, and they were promising it would outperform Lumina Technologies on every metric. I read through the technical specifications they'd released. The system was different enough from our patents to avoid legal issues, but similar enough that it was clearly trying to capitalize on our success. "What do you think?" Lucas asked. I pulled up our engineering specs and compared them. I think they've made the same mistake they made before. They're focused on marketing instead of engineering. The thermal management system won't work at scale. They'll get maybe 60% efficiency before the whole thing overheats. Should we say something publicly? No, let them launch it. Let them take pre-orders. And when it fails, we'll be there with a working alternative. Andrea agreed with my assessment. Sometimes the best response is no response. Let their product speak for itself. The Whitmore Next Gen system launched with tremendous fanfare. Full-page ads in major publications, a splashy event in Las Vegas, celebrity endorsements. They'd clearly spent tens of millions on marketing. Initial reviews were positive. The system looked impressive, the marketing materials were slick, and Whitmore's reputation still carried weight despite recent setbacks. But then actual testing began. Independent reviewers started running the kind of stress tests that real-world applications would require. And the problems emerged exactly where I'd predicted. At 62% capacity, the thermal management system started failing. At 70%, the entire system became unstable. Tech Review published a scathing article titled Whitmore's Next Gen System, All Sizzle, No Substance. Datacore Systems, one of Whitmore's oldest clients, publicly canceled their order and switched to Lumina Technologies. Within 3 months, the next-gen system was quietly discontinued. Cassandra, who'd been brought back from Europe specifically to manage the launch, was reassigned again. This time to a minor division handling legacy systems maintenance. Effectively, her career at Whitmore Industries was over. I heard through industry contacts that William Whitmore was furious. The botched TechVance acquisition, the failed Lumina launch, and now the next-gen disaster had cost the company over $500 million. The board was demanding accountability. Lumina Technologies passed our first anniversary with revenues exceeding projections by 40%. We'd created 800 jobs, opened facilities in 6 states, and fundamentally disrupted the data storage industry. Andrea and Velocity Ventures were ecstatic, already talking about expansion into adjacent markets. One afternoon, about 14 months after my wedding day, my assistant informed me I had a visitor. Cassandra Whitmore was in the lobby, asking to see me. I almost said no, almost had security escort her out, but curiosity won. She looked different, less polished, more uncertain. The armor of confidence she usually wore had visible cracks. "I know I have no right to be here," she said without preamble. And I know you have every reason to have me thrown out, but I needed to say something. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat, her movements careful, controlled. I underestimated you. Completely. I saw you as an obstacle, someone who had something I wanted, and I tried to destroy you without thinking about the consequences. And it cost me everything. My position at the company, my father's respect, my reputation. Everything. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and surprisingly, I meant it. Not because I felt bad for her, but because I'd moved so far past our conflict that her suffering didn't bring me any satisfaction. Are you? Because you'd have every right to gloat. Gloating would require me to still care about proving something to you. I don't. She flinched slightly. I guess I deserve that. Did you come here for absolution? Because I'm not interested in providing it. No, I came here because I wanted you to know that you were right. About the business practices, about treating people with respect, about building something sustainable instead of just acquiring and crushing competition. I didn't understand that before. I do now. I studied her for a long moment. What are you going to do now? I'm starting over. Smaller company, different industry, trying to do things differently. It's humbling. Good, humility looks better on you than arrogance did. She smiled slightly at that. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that watching you succeed taught me more about business than my father ever did. So, thank you, even though I don't deserve your lessons. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about the strange arc of the past year. From bride to divorcee to CEO. From victim to victor. From someone who'd been broken down to someone who'd built herself back up stronger. My phone buzzed. A message from the team about a new partnership opportunity. Another about a potential acquisition of a smaller startup that complemented our technology. The work never stopped, but I didn't mind. This was what I'd chosen. What I'd fought for. Rachel Morrison appeared in my doorway. She'd become my chief financial officer 6 months ago, bringing insider knowledge of Whitmore's business practices that proved invaluable. The quarterly reports are ready for review. We're up 22% from last quarter. Any problem areas? The Austin facility is running behind on production targets, but nothing we can't handle with the equipment upgrades we've already approved. Good, schedule a team meeting for tomorrow. I want to go over expansion plans for the Pacific Northwest. Rachel nodded and left. Through my office window, I could see the parking lot filling with employees arriving for the afternoon shift. 800 jobs, 800 families who depended on the company I'd built from nothing but patents and determination. The weight of that responsibility should have felt crushing. Instead, it felt right. My phone rang, Andrea Wolf. Have you seen the acquisition offer? She asked without preamble. What acquisition offer? Check your email. Microsoft wants to buy Lumina Technologies, $3.2 billion. My heart stopped. That's not possible. It's very possible. They see what we've built, they understand the value, and they want it. The offer letter just came through. They're giving us 72 hours to respond. I pulled up my email, and there it was. A formal offer from Microsoft Corporation to acquire Lumina Technologies for $3.2 billion in cash and stock. My 30% stake would be worth nearly $1 billion. They want to keep you on as division president, Andrea continued. Complete operational autonomy, budget approval for continued R&D, and a seat on their technology advisory board. It's a good offer, Alara. Actually, it's an incredible offer. I stared at the numbers on my screen. $1 billion. Financial security for the rest of my life. Validation of everything I'd built. The ability to scale Lumina's technology to a global market with Microsoft's resources behind it. What do you think I should do? That's not my call. Velocity Ventures will support whatever decision you make. But I will say this, you've proven everything you set out to prove. You've built a successful company, disrupted an industry, and made the people who tried to destroy you regret it. The question is, what do you want to do next? What did I want? I'd spent the past year fighting, building, proving myself. The thought of cashing out, of walking away with $1 billion and the satisfaction of knowing I'd won, was tempting. but I'd also built something special at Lumina Technologies, a company culture that valued innovation and integrity, a team that trusted each other, a product that was genuinely making the world better. I need to think about it, I said finally. You have 72 hours, use them. I called an emergency board meeting for the next morning. The Lumina Technologies board consisted of me, Andrea, 2 representatives from Velocity Ventures, and 3 independent directors we'd brought on as the company grew. I presented the Microsoft offer and waited for their responses. Jackson Mills, one of our independent directors and a former CEO himself, spoke first. This is the kind of exit that most founders dream about. The valuation is fair, the terms are favorable, and Microsoft has the resources to take Lumina to the next level. From a purely business perspective, it's a no-brainer. But, I asked, because I could hear the hesitation in his voice. But you didn't build this company for a purely business perspective. You built it because Cassandra Whitmore tried to destroy you, and you refused to let her win. You built it because the industry needed someone willing to compete on integrity instead of just aggressive acquisition. The question is whether Microsoft will preserve that, or whether Lumina just becomes another division in a massive corporation that eventually loses what made it special. The discussion went on for 3 hours. Arguments for accepting, arguments for declining, attempts to negotiate better terms. By the end, we'd reached a consensus. The decision was mine to make. The board would support whatever I chose. I spent that night walking through the Austin facility, watching the overnight shift work. Engineers monitoring production lines, quality control specialists running tests, logistics coordinators managing shipments, all of it running smoothly, efficiently, because we'd built systems that worked and hired people who cared. One of the engineers, a woman named Stephanie Stephanie Warner, noticed me and came over. Miss Nakamura, everything okay? Just checking on things. How's the new production line running? Beautifully, we're already exceeding targets, and the quality metrics are better than expected. Whatever changes the engineering team made last month really paid off. I'd made those changes, actually. Spent a weekend reviewing the production specs and realized we could optimize the thermal coupling by adjusting the assembly sequence. It was the kind of hands-on work I loved, the reason I'd gotten into this industry in the first place. Glad to hear it. Keep up the good work. As I walked back to my office, my decision crystallized. Microsoft's offer was generous, but accepting it would mean giving up control. Giving up the ability to make those kinds of technical decisions. Giving up the company culture I'd worked so hard to build. I'd spent my entire career watching companies get acquired and lose their soul in the process. TechVance had been heading that direction even before Whitmore bought it. I wasn't going to let that happen to Lumina. I called Andrea at 6 a.m. We're declining the offer. There was a pause. You're sure? Completely. Draft a response thanking Microsoft for their interest, but explaining that Lumina Technologies isn't for sale. Be polite, be professional, and leave the door open for future partnerships. But make it clear. We're not selling. Alara, you're turning down $1 billion. I'm turning down $1 billion to keep something worth more than that. Send the response. The news that I'd declined Microsoft's acquisition offer made headlines. Business journalists called it everything from brilliant strategic positioning to foolish ego-driven decision-making. Industry analysts debated whether I just made the best or worst decision of my career. I didn't particularly care about their opinions. I knew what Lumina Technologies was worth, and it wasn't something that could be measured purely in dollars. The rejection seemed to have an unexpected effect. 2 weeks later, we received partnership proposals from 3 other major tech companies. Not acquisition offers, but genuine partnerships. Joint development agreements. Technology licensing deals. Collaborative research initiatives. Apparently, being the company that turned down Microsoft made us more attractive, not less. We were seen as independent, principled, willing to walk away from easy money in favor of long-term vision. Within 6 months, those partnerships had expanded our market reach beyond anything we could have achieved alone. Lumina technology was being integrated into data centers across 4 continents. Our revenue doubled, then doubled again. And I still maintained control, still made the key technical decisions, still preserved the company culture that made Lumina special. 2 years after my wedding day, Forbes ran a cover story titled "The CEO Who Said No: How Alara Nakamura Built a Tech Empire on Her Own Terms." The article detailed the whole saga: the wedding day text from Cassandra, the embezzlement accusations, the patent ownership revelation, the founding of Lumina Technologies, the tech-forward conference confrontation, and the decision to turn down Microsoft's billions. The article ended with a quote from me: "Success isn't about how much money you make or how many companies you acquire. It's about building something that matters and doing it in a way you can be proud of. Everything else is just noise." The story went viral. I started getting speaking invitations from business schools, technology conferences, women's leadership organizations. Everyone wanted to hear about how I'd turned a disaster into a triumph. I accepted some of the invitations, the ones that felt genuine. At MIT, I talked to engineering students about the importance of protecting their intellectual property. At Stanford Business School, I discussed ethical leadership in competitive industries. At the Women in Technology Summit, I shared the story of that wedding day text and everything that followed. The question I got asked most often was always the same: do you regret your wedding day? Do you wish things had turned out differently? My answer was always honest. I regret that I married someone who didn't truly see me as an equal partner. I regret that Cassandra Whitmore felt the need to try to destroy me rather than compete fairly. But do I regret how things turned out? Not for a second. That day set me free to build something extraordinary. Sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually the best things that ever happened to you. 3 years after my wedding day, I ran into James at a charity gala. He was there with his new girlfriend, a marketing executive he'd apparently been dating for about a year. She seemed nice, warm and friendly in a way that suggested she genuinely cared about him. "Alara," he said, approaching me with surprising ease, "it's good to see you." "You too, you look happy." "I am. Sarah and I are actually engaged, getting married next spring." "Congratulations, I mean that." "Thanks, and congratulations to you too. I've been following Lumina's success. It's impressive what you've built." We talked for a few minutes, the conversation surprisingly comfortable. Whatever bitterness had existed between us had faded, replaced by a kind of mutual respect for the paths we'd chosen. "I should have supported you that day," he said finally. "When Cassandra sent that text, I should have been outraged for you, should have helped you fight back. Instead, I laughed it off and expected you to do the same. That was wrong. We both made mistakes, but I think we both ended up where we needed to be. Still, I'm sorry for not seeing how important it was, for not understanding what you were capable of. I forgive you, James, honestly. We just weren't right for each other, and it took a crisis to make that clear." He smiled, genuine and warm. For what it's worth, I tell people that I was married to Alara Nakamura for exactly 1 day before she went off and became one of the most successful tech CEOs in the country. It's actually a pretty good story. Just make sure you tell them you laughed when I got fired. It makes the story better. He laughed at that, and so did I, and it felt like closing a chapter that had needed closure. Cassandra's new company launched about 6 months later. It was small, focused on educational technology for underserved communities, completely different from the aggressive corporate world she'd grown up in. I watched from a distance as she built something genuine, something that actually helped people. She'd learned from her mistakes, apparently. The company wasn't flashy or highly profitable, but it was making a real difference. She never contacted me again after that visit to my office. I appreciated that. Some relationships are better left in the past. Lumina Technologies continued to grow. 5 years after founding, we employed over 3,000 people across 12 facilities. We'd expanded into adjacent technologies, always staying true to our core principle: build things that actually work, treat people with respect, and compete on merit rather than underhanded tactics. The Whitmores never fully recovered from the disasters I'd helped trigger. William Whitmore retired early, handing control of Whitmore Industries to his younger son, who immediately began restructuring the company's acquisition strategy. They were more careful now, more ethical. They'd learned expensive lessons. Sometimes I thought about that text message, the one that had arrived at 2:15 on my wedding day. Consider this your termination notice. 9 words that Cassandra had meant to destroy me. Instead, they'd freed me. They'd forced me to choose between comfortable complacency and difficult integrity. They'd pushed me to risk everything on a venture that could have failed spectacularly. And they'd led me to build something far better than anything I could have achieved by playing it safe. The best revenge really was success. But more than that, the best life was the one you built on your own terms, regardless of who tried to stop you. If you found something valuable in this story, if you've ever had to choose between what was comfortable and what was right, that subscribe button is there for you. We're building something here at Payback Office Channel, a community that believes integrity still matters and that success tastes better when you've earned it honestly. Help us reach 8,000 subscribers, and let's keep telling these stories together.